Hi YouTube. I don't really make videos. This is my first video, and I felt compelled to make it because I think the message and the information I've come across is important enough to share. I have actually come across the reason for all global warming. It actually has nothing to do with automobiles, with exhaust fumes, coal burning plants, or burning plastic bags. Everything that the critics have told you is false. It actually is something much more simple than that. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, how am I going to believe you? You work for the oil industry. I worked, past tense, for the oil industry. I pumped gas for a local gas station in high school. And in terms of the check that I received from the oil industry, they only gave that to me after I found out what I did, as an encouragement to really share my findings with the world. I was going to do it anyway, so it was really a nice added bonus. But let's get to the facts anyhow. In my hands, I hold the reason for all global warming. Baked beans. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, all right, this guy's nuts. That's crazy. I don't blame you, but just bear with me. This year in Toronto, we had a very low supply of baked beans. It was very difficult to find in local grocery stores. Coincidentally, at least what I thought was a coincidence at the time, we had record snowfall in Toronto. Now, in terms of myself, I continued to eat baked beans throughout the entire winter. I had a lot of stock left over from some Costco shopping I did in the summer. Now, the first thing I noticed was I had no snow on my entire lawn. Nothing in my backyard, nothing in my front yard. I never had to even shovel my driveway. I knew something was very, very odd, but I didn't know what. But then I switched to these. Barbecue baked beans with chili sauce and all kinds of good stuff in it. Essentially baked beans on steroids. What happened next was there was no snow on my entire street. That's when I really started to connect the dots, and I started to figure out what was going on, and I wanted to do a little bit more research. And I did. And I pulled together a few charts. And I'll show you one of these. This shows the last 30 Christmases, all the Christmases over the last 30 years. The red line indicates baked bean sales. The blue line represents temperature. As you can see, they pretty much work together. They follow the same kind of general trend. So each year we had low baked bean sales. For whatever reason, reduced supply, reduced demand, increased company over for Christmas, and therefore an increased awareness over bodily functions and their noises. Whatever the reason may be, each time we had low baked bean sales, we had a cold enough temperature to sustain a white Christmas. The temperature went down and we received lots of snow. Now, I don't want to seem foodist. It's actually more widespread than that. I started to research our globe and the hot zones in our globe, all of the warm climates, and started to categorize the various areas by food type. If you look across the northern hemisphere, in places like the UK you have shepherd's pie and Yorkshire puddings and that kind of stuff. In Canada you have mashed potatoes and hot dogs and that kind of stuff. As you go further south into the warmer zones, you start to see things like spicy chicken wings, Tex-Mex. Once you get into Mexico, you get Mexican food. I don't think I really need to elaborate there. As you continue south, further away from the equator, and you get into southern Argentina and the cooler zones, you start to see milder foods again. Things like, sweet foods and croissants and that kind of stuff. Then, if you actually think of the coldest areas on Earth, the North Pole and the South Pole, they don't eat anything at all there. So the globe and the warm zones on our planet are very characteristic and have similarities with the types of foods being served in those areas. Now, I know I pretty much got you on board now. It's a black and white argument. But I have more. The icing on top, if you will. If you remember a couple of years ago, we had that big scare with Taco Bell. They had the whole E. coli problem. And a number of those Taco Bell locations closed down. So what I did was I looked at those regions that had the most number of Taco Bells that closed down, and I drew another chart. The red line represents Taco Bell sales. This is the drop off when they closed down and they started to sell nothing. As you can see, the blue line representing the temperature started to slowly drop. When Taco Bell reopened, obviously their sales didn't go back to where they were before, but regardless, it started to go back up and you started to see an immediate change in the temperature. Now, I don't want to seem like I'm all high and mighty here and I've kind of figured it all out. That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to point fingers here. In fact, I am probably the most responsible in Canada for global warming, with my dad and my brother in at a close second and third. If I were to take a guess, I'd say as a family, we've probably melted a good 400 miles worth of polar caps. So the last thing I want to do is lay blame. Instead, I want to bring awareness to this topic. I want people to rethink the whole pull my finger notion and the global impacts behind that. So whether you start to be a little bit more conscious about these foods, or you initiate policy change, or even if this video makes a small dent, I will feel that this video had some purpose. So thank you for listening. Please spread the word and let people know what's going on with our planet.